Spencer is usually on this and he opens the intro, so I'm trying to think about how he does it. But we'll do it live.
You've got it, Gray.
We got it. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor. I'm your favorite host, Gray Hall, and we've got our fill-in guest host, Noel Christopher. How you doing, Noel?
I'm doing awesome.
Yeah, this is fun. We're doing it without Spencer. We kicked him off for the week, getting the old guy off of here, and we've got an exciting guest to talk about today. We've got Mr. Brian Grimes on the show with us. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. So, Brian, tell us about yourself, man. Where are you located, and how you kind of got into real estate? We'd love to step back, kind of hear your story, and yes, take it away.
So I'm out in the New York area now. I'm from Philadelphia. I grew up like a Sixers fan, Allen Iverson fan, Philly basketball kid. Grew to be about 6'5" by I would say like age 13, 14. Got nationally recruited and played basketball kind of all over the country. First high school game was against a guy named LeBron James. They flew us out to Akron, Ohio.
Who's that?
Exactly. Well, that was my question when we got started, but I didn't have a question after the game.
So you played against LeBron?
Yeah, his junior year, they flew us out to Akron. And it's hard for people to kind of date it because they say, well, how would you not know who he is? YouTube wasn't built out. A lot of the social media wasn't built out in 2004, realistically. So they still would have like a VHS tape, of the guy. And I got like a 5'6", 250-pound coach yelling at me saying, oh, he's going to go baseline. He's got tomahawk on your head. We're looking at what is this guy talking about? Are these coaches going crazy? Because I had a 7-footer, a 6'8" lefty. The 7-footer went to Vanderbilt, 6'8" lefty went to Duke, and 6'7" shooting guard went to University of Florida. And they're all top 50 ranked.
On your team?
I'm sorry?
On your team? Those are the guys on your team?
Yeah.
So you're feeling pretty good.
I'm feeling great. I mean, we got an NBA-sized lineup, and he was really just a beast. I mean, there's nothing like how high LeBron could even still jump. I mean, you have to imagine this guy at 18, 17. I mean, he could just fly. It was insane.
Wow. Spencer, the guy we work with, there's a big debate in our office, LeBron versus Michael. And then after this, we'll get off the basketball tangent and get back to real estate. But what's your take? Who's a better player?
I think for my generation, we look at LeBron. And I've seen Jordan. I'm kind of like a tweener between those two.
Yeah.
I think they are different, but LeBron as a total player, with the passing, with just his size as well.
Yeah.
It's just a different animal. It's a really different animal, but from just a competitive nature, nobody beats Jordan on competition. Like nobody is that fierce or feared. People fear LeBron, but they feared Jordan at an all-time level. So it's tough. I think they're both Mount Rushmore, but LeBron's longevity, I think, is what's getting him, more.
That was a very balanced answer. That was well. You didn't upset either side of the side.
Yeah, I feel like
I'm a LeBron so
it's good. I heard you mention that on another podcast, and I thought that was pretty. You don't meet many people who've played against LeBron. So, anyways, you played against LeBron in high school. What happened after that?
No, basketball took me all over the country, all over the world, really. Landed me at Columbia University, so I finished up basketball there. But when I was there, I met a lot of good mentors, former athletes who were out in New York and doing Wall Street things and making more money with their mind than they ever could with their body. And that kind of led me into finance. I got into financial planning. I always wanted to be my own boss. I always wanted to work for myself and kind of call my own shots. And I ended up going back to Philly, working 100% commission, straight out of college, no contacts. Everybody I knew was broke. And, I probably made $6,000 my first 6 months of work. And so I paid the work. But as I was saving and investing, I was driving around looking at real estate and just stacking up money to invest in real estate. My goal was to just get cash flow coming in and enough cash flow coming in to, break free from the 9-to-5 and hustle bustle.
Who got you into real estate? Because it was in some of those mentors kind of talking about that.
It was some of the mentors, but it was also, one of my best friends, I would say my best friend at the time and still now, we would always talk about real estate. He got into the Robert Kiyosaki cash flow stuff. He got into the Donald Trump books. He got into all of this stuff, and he was a few years older than me. So when he graduated, he picked up a couple of Section 8 properties. He might have had like 2 or 3 properties by the time I got my first one. And that's all we started talking about. He got into, he was a finance guy as well. So he was working at Bank of America as a analyst, and which he hated. Like our claim to fame is nobody hates the 9-to-5 more than us. Like we're like the worst employees you could ever have in that sense. We're just miserable. We're good workers, but we're just miserable the whole time. And we would just talk real estate and educate each other. And having that accountability person that you can talk to about real estate, even in your like personal time, it will accelerate you. So that's all we talked about. And it ultimately led to me get my first property. In fact, when I first bought it, he showed up to help me like paint it, sweep the floors. And, I just handed it over. It was pretty much turnkey. So put tenants right in and start collecting cash flow.
Love it. And for the listeners, like, what does your portfolio look like today? So you kind of started with one rental in Philly. Is that right?
I started with one rental in Philly, following my one of my mentors' principles, which was buy where you know, rent to who you know, you'll always be successful. So I bought it in my backyard. I've rented to people that were kind of like mine, and it's been a cash cow ever since. And the funny part about me was while I was doing this, my girlfriend, soon to be fiance, now wife, was up in New York, and I was interviewing up in New York looking for a job. And I got a job in Midtown as this transition happened. So I closed, and then 1 week later, I'm an out-of-town landlord. So I immediately became out of town, and that kind of led me to sticking with that long term. So even as I'm building Philly, and I've built, over, I would say 250 properties just in Philly, buy and hold, birth strategy rentals, and then, more around like 300 or more, just kind of all over the country. It's all just been out of town. So as I'm doing this, I'm scaling different systems, technology, the things that we have access to today that guys who were doing this in the 1980s, they prayed for stuff like this, to be able to just send somebody in with a smartphone and see everything. We can now take advantage of it.
Even 10 years ago, it's changed. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. We with the technology speed, it's like every 10 years is like 100 years of regular life. So yeah, what your smartphone can do today, I mean, it couldn't do. So definitely 10, 15 years.
So what is your advice? Because the advice you were given, and I think you hear this a lot, like invest where you know, and I do think there's some wisdom in that. You instantly became an out-of-state landlord.
Yeah.
What's your what's your take on that now? Where should newer investors look and start?
My take is to look where your money goes the furthest, because we're in more of a tech savvy field. Like what applications can do now, it's insane. So you can manage out of town, especially if you have a good relationship, good property management company that you can rely on, and that has systems in place. Taking your money, like I look at it from a asset management standpoint. When I was up in New York and took this job, I was working at a boutique firm. We managed $1.4 billion for about 300 privately wealthy families. And any good asset manager is going to take your money and put it in undervalued assets, wait for them to return to their inherent value and sell them and cash in on the spread. So I kind of look at real estate similarly, which is invest in properties where the inherent value of the property, where you can buy it lower than the inherent value. What I mean by that is, let's say I go into Baltimore and I could buy a shell for $30K, or I could buy a move-in ready property kind of for like $75,000. The cost, if you look at your insurance policy, the replacement cost of that building is still like $250K. If it burned down to the ground, there is a value in just the structure being tapped into the utility lines, this brick foundation. There's a inherent value to that. So if you're buying at 75 and the inherent value is 180, over the course of time, 10, 15 years, the property will return to that value in a balanced marketplace. And a lot of people can become millionaires by playing that game. So taking your money, put it where it can go further. If you're in a priced out market, you have to look elsewhere these days, especially with rates where they are today.
Yeah, it's tough. Noel, I've been looking around the markets. It's tough to find deals right now. But I think if you're lucky, maybe you live in a market like Memphis or Philly. I'm not super familiar with that market, but you might be able to invest. But there's a lot of people that live in California, Los Angeles, New York. It's just not feasible to buy there. And so a lot of our clients, people that we work with, they're able to look at all these markets. There's tons of tools online. You can say, hey, where's the yield the highest? Where can I put $25,000, $30,000 down and still get a return on that money? And yeah, I think there's no wrong way to do it, but it might feel a little more risky to invest out of state because you can't drive over there. But at the same time, if you build a good team, it kind of removes that fear. And then you can start to really multiply your capital because you're not beholden to where I can drive and where I can do things. And you can start to use leverage and scale of another team in another market to get further.
Yeah, you have to take that leap of faith at times. It does become about having good teams. It also becomes about having, good mentorship. If you're going to invest in Cleveland, go talk, deal with somebody who's done it, who's doing it actively, who can tap you into that market. So I would say even now with social media, there's such a bigger opportunity. Like when I was first getting started, it was just me and my buddy out there, or you could read a book, but there weren't many mentorship programs, definitely not as many as exist today, where you can tap into knowledge. Because what they don't tell you about the School of Hard Knocks, they say, oh, well, you'll learn. And you will learn after you lose enough money. But the cost, you think the School of Hard Knocks is 2 to 3x the cost of mentorship. It's not, it's 100x. I've lost over $500,000 in this game in the States. And I make that very simple. Take 300 deals, multiply that by $1,500 per deal. That's like $500,000, right? So yep. It's easy to lose that much money in this game. Mentorship is a fraction of that. It's better to go and pay for somebody's mistakes than to make them, yourself. So just pay for the value of that. It's a fraction of the cost.
I think it's nuanced tue. Noel and I have talked a lot about this. Like you can look in other markets and you can use all the technology, but there still is inherent value in knowing that this side of the street is better than that side. Development is moving this way. This is the amount of money. Don't update the bathroom here, but put the money over here because that's going to give you an extra $200 or $300. And so it's kind of like both and. I mean, you can use the technology to invest from afar, but that local touch is still super, super important. Whether it's a good agent, a good property manager, another investor in that market, like you've got to still leverage that side of it. You can't do it completely behind a computer screen.
Yeah, and you need to know things like, hey, L&I, they're a little backed up in the office because they had a scandal and they just wiped out the whole force and put in new people. And now they're even stricter and your permits are going to take 3 months longer. You need all of that knowledge. Like if you go in, there's some things that you will never know until you tap into somebody who's been there, been around and knows the politics. You also don't want to be a landlord everywhere because sometimes you can't really evict well here. It's not that I wouldn't buy in California necessarily because of the pricing. It's like, can you evict? These are some good questions that you have to, ask yourself as a landlord. How easy is it? Are there better markets to be a landlord in? So you have to kind of weigh all these things, and having a local touch, like you said, is definitely important.
Yeah, Brian, I've got a question around, I have quite a bit of experience in Chicago investing in Section 8 properties, and that was my business for several years, and it was a very difficult town to do business in.
Absolutely.
Overall, just especially around landlord-tenant laws. But what's your secret to, looking at those C-class type Section 8 buildings or homes in the areas you invest in? How do you pick a neighborhood or an area that is going to be better than others, that you think that performs better? Because some areas are just tough. They become tough and you can tell by when you go on the block and how well people take care of their house and things like that. But, there's a need for affordable housing everywhere. And this is an area that most institutional funds don't go after. Most of the corporate type landlords don't fill this need. And it's really relied on small investors to buy and rehabilitate these homes in these areas so that they can rent them out to affordable, housing.
Yeah, I think it becomes, look, Section 8 can be great, but Section 8 can have a lot of problems. Some of the problems are the inspection process, how long it takes to just get a property passed. Sometimes, like I had a guy coming in a Baltimore property. My guy, everything's clean, like it's moving ready, beyond moving ready. The guy's got an apple. He's got his lunch box and an apple on the counter. The inspector's walking by. I usually fail people for that. Right. Like, apple? Yeah, the apple. We're like, whoa, some of these people, they don't know why they're there. Like you're here to help with affordable housing, not fail properties because there's an apple on the table and there's a tenant that's been waiting months. So you might have things to deal with like that in certain Section 8 offices. They're not all created equally. I would say tenant screening becomes difficult in these markets because you have to learn how to underwrite people, not credit scores. And that's very difficult because most of underwriting teaches you to underwrite numbers, underwrite the credit score, underwrite their paycheck. But some people are making money, they don't have paychecks. They're getting paid under the table and they're kind of good there. So learning how to underwrite people better, learning how to screen for professional tenants. What's a professional tenant? Somebody who's in their 50s, maybe even 40s, but you can look and see they've been renting their whole life and they know the landlord-tenant law better than your attorney. You know, how do you screen for that? Do you know how to dig through the dockets for the municipality and see if they filed motions to stay evictions and postpone? And do they know all of these different tips and tricks because you don't want to deal with them if they do? So, you know, understanding all these tips and tricks are important. But then I always tell people, in every good neighborhood, there's a bad section. In every bad neighborhood, there's a good section. So it's really about getting down at that grassroots level, finding the areas that are right on the outskirts of gentrification so that you can buy and wait for value to hit you and you can pull in better talent. Even with all that being said on Section 8, I actually got more into co-living over the course of time because Section 8, sometimes it's like you're trying to punch through a brick wall and you could just walk around it. And I found the true solution to the affordable housing crisis to be co-living, which is where I'll take a 3-bed, you can think like Chicago, another row home city or townhome city. I'll take a 3-bed, 1-bath, and you know how those are set up. You open the front door, you're in the living room, then there's a dining room, kitchen, and then upstairs it's a bedroom in the back, bedroom in the middle, bedroom in the front, and a bathroom somewhere in the middle. I'll blow it up to the 4 walls and rebuild it back as 3 co-living units, which would be 3 master suites, bedroom, bathroom. The only way to the bathroom is through the bedroom. And everybody has their own little kind of studio with a shared kitchen space that's right in the front of the property. So now you open the property, you have like a little eating kitchen. Everybody shares that common area, and then everybody has their little suite. And you can rent those out. Let's say a property rented for $1,250 a month, 3 beds, 1 bath. I could rent each co-living unit out for $750. So I turn that footprint into $2,250 a month. I'm creating affordable workforce housing for the people who are driving for Amazon, who are driving Uber, making $3,000 a month. Now they can live, all utilities included, internet, at $750 fixed. And I'm still producing an extra $1,000 a month, a spread over what the average property is getting. So I started to get more into co-living and creating this product for, look, there are millions of Americans sitting on their parents' couch or sleeping in the basement, right? So you start to create this build it and they will come type of product. And it definitely has a high amount of demand, higher than I think most people know. And you can build this not only in A-class neighborhoods, but also in C.
Well, remind me later, I have someone to introduce you to around that space that's looking for more operators within markets that they can help build more co-living.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really great. And so most of those co-living, they're not qualifying for subsidized housing or typically no. And they're just people who need a room that can afford to pay that $750, which isn't as bad as paying, being committed to an entire place and having to figure all that out and figure out Section 8. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's millions of people like this because you have to think. I mean, Section 8. So how long is that waiting? 27, 40,000 people. So
40,000 in Chicago or more.
Yeah, exactly. So they can't get on. You have all these people who are disenfranchised, and then you have all these people who don't even qualify. So what do they get? They get shot out of the market completely. So this is a fish in the bucket type of in a barrel market of people who are just sitting there. They have no product to go on, and you're creating this affordable workforce housing for them. You don't need low income housing tax credits, any subsidies. This is, to me, the purest solution. So
how operationally heavy is that? Because I know some people who've done that out here in Denver where I live. Similar young professionals tend to kind of like rent some of those rooms. That becomes more operationally intensive. You're managing the internet, you're managing 3 leases. Now, instead of 1 lease, you've got 3. How have you kind of overcome that?
You got to set the tone. It's like I got battle tested in Section 8. So it's
that's a good way to put it.
Again, you set that tone. This is how we run things. We run a tight ship. the rent's due this time, it's late here, there's the 10-day pay or quit, and then you're going. And also setting the house rules, and then also doing things like personality tests and screening that's a little bit more catered towards underwriting a person, to make sure you're putting like-minded people in there, not somebody who's falling in that like dark triad, like section that's going to ruin the product. But if you just find the right people, you put, like, I'm not going to put your grandma in the house with, the 27-year-old girl and then the 35-year-old guy, because they're just not going to match. Mm-hmm. But building the right group of people, putting them in the product, a lot of it can be not as labor-intensive as like your typical Section 8 property. Because
it's unfortunate how labor-intensive it can be. And so I'm glad that you're hitting on, like, there's positives, like, yes, it's guaranteed. There are a lot of hoops to jump through, and I love there's a brick wall you're running into, and it might be better to run around it. And I think it's unfortunate because I think there's a real need for that. There is sometimes it's really hard to operate.
Well, yeah, you have to just look at, what you can handle. Like, I have a guy, he's in Arkansas, and he's crushing it. Like, he joined my mentorship program, did like 10 roundup deals the first year, and he's just crushing it. And he was doing Section 8, but they have like almost no underwriting process there. Like, for guys like us who've been in the major cities, it's like, what do you mean? Oh, you just take the voucher and they just slap you. And you're like, but they inspect them every year. Oh, no. There's just one guy. They don't have a big enough inspection office. They got to pull another inspection office from the county over. And they're just like, whatever, pass it. So depending on where you're at, you could, run like your hair's on fire. But when you're in the major cities, it can be daunting. It can be very difficult to scale. And when I build systems, I always look at them like, can I scale this by 100? I did 153 deals in 2019. And that was because I shifted to co-living. I wasn't slowed down as much. Because you can run into different problems. Like, once you solve construction, you have your own warehouse, your fleet of trucks, your all your own contractors and your foreman, and you can build faster than the money moves. So I can go out and get paid to build if I'm buying shells and full gut renovating them, do cash out refinances. But then your problem is you're going to bottleneck on tenanting because Section 8s can't move as fast as you can build. And then it's like, now you're stuck. So I think it depends also on your speed and scalability. So it can be a tough question on what to do.
It definitely can. Even I've got a lot of experience in Birmingham, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks for initial inspection, and then they fail it for something like an Apple or for some other kind of like silly little thing. It's another 3 or 4 weeks, and all of a sudden you've got 60, 90 days of vacancy that you weren't prepared for, and can be frustrating, especially if this is your first investment, you're out of state and you're running 5% vacancy. And so I think it's a good thing, kind of eyes wide open going into Section 8 rentals. Just know that, hey, there are pros, but there are also cons. And so you may choose to start out there, but also you may choose to pivot. Where I've seen it work well is going all in, as opposed to kind of I'm building this for the long term on the side. More so, I'm fully in this and I know everything top to bottom and I kind of understand the system. I've seen people like that kind of scale it. Sounds like the guy in Little Rock that you're talking about.
Yeah, and one thing I will say to their defense, at least in Philly, is they've really modernized the systems in Section 8 for Philly. They created a new office, new online platform, way more technology. You can schedule the inspections on your computer now versus sitting on hold or, for hours. And you guys, I'm sure, both dealt with that or paid people to deal with that. And it's just, it can get better. So I've seen over time, sometimes, like 2 years ago, Section 8 was way worse in Philly. Then now it's actually more streamlined and smoother. So it depends. It does evolve over time. I definitely think as a strategy, it's one of the more conservative and safer, things when the government's paying the majority of the money. But the risks are on underwriting the people. I tell people real estate's the people business. Is not necessarily the heart business. A lot of social workers for some reason want to get into real estate and then they just get their heart ripped out of their chest. They become the Grinch overnight, which I tell them, this ain't a heart business, but it is a people business. So you have to get really good at picking winners. Whether you're doing commercial real estate, whether you're buying strip malls, you better learn how to underwrite good people to put in that real estate that can pay or that are easy to deal with. If they're not easy to deal with before you give them the keys, what do you think is going to happen when the sinks broke or the toilets broke or there's a basement flood? they're going to be a nightmare. So picking good people, I think, is the thing people don't focus on enough. And that's how you get burnt out of Section 8 is you fill 100 properties with bad people and then you're stuck with them. And they'll destroy you.
Vacancy is the number one killer of real estate. And so, yeah, 100%, totally agree. And I think it's people, but it's also real estate. So talk about, how do you advise like out-of-state investors to kind of value real estate? Like you mentioned buying in the outside of gentrification. Are you kind of, the people that you mentor at least, talking, hey, A class, B class, C class, like where are you kind of pointing people? And then talk about kind of types of assets you're pointing them to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best assets, I'll kind of work a little bit backwards. The best asset right now, because of rates, is definitely multifamily. There are still some single family assets that will cash flow, but you need something to offset increasing, rates. And right now, multifamily will have enough juice in it where you're getting a couple of rents and you can kind of offset that extra interest carry on some of these properties. In terms of, location, I'll kind of leave that to the person, because there are also arbitrage opportunities that you can do with things like Section 8. Like Section 8, at least in Philly, and I've seen this in some other places, they'll have high opportunity rent zones. So they'll select certain zip codes where they'll pay way above market. And you can pull something in a B class neighborhood for a little bit more money, put in $20K, just spit shine it, do a burn on it, and cash flow it. And it's like an ultimate, 4 to 6 week arbitrage kind of play. I like, if you're going to do some flipping, I like getting in more of the A minus B plus type of pockets. If you're going to do some flipping. How I work is really, I always like to work backwards in terms of value. So I like to pull comps first. I like to go in and find the lowest priced properties in any pocket. Could be an A class market, just in your backyard is the best place to start. Find the lowest priced property that's in your range, and then pull comps on it and learn how to pull comps. The problem with technology now is people think they're going to go on PropStream, push the comps button, and now they know comps. You don't. You have to learn how to think like an appraiser, like at that level. I've dealt with over 1,000 appraisals doing the BRRRR strategy on hundreds of deals. So once you can think at that level, now you can uncover developer spreads. Properties that have like a $200,000, $250,000 spread between the asking price and the ARV. And when you start to learn the cost of gut renovation or construction, becoming your own GC, you can see where you can create a living. I can go in, put $100K in, refinance out, do this will cash flow and then for X, Y, Z. So I work on that very rudimentary level of analysis. I don't get into the 1% rule or all of these different, there's like 100 rules out there. I don't get into any of that. It's just money coming in, money going out, cost of construction, cost of lending, really just getting into the weeds with it. And doing that homework, I found, makes me 10% faster than the average investor. I'm probably 100% faster now, but you only need to be 10% faster. Once the best deals on the market, people don't know this. You can go on an MLS. People ask me, Brian, where do you get the best deals? Do you get them all off market? I said, well, 90% of the market is the MLS every year. Only 10% of the properties that move are off market. So if you're not looking on the MLS, you're cutting yourself off from the volume. The best deals go on and off market in 24 to 48 hours. So if you don't have a bulletproof process for seeing something, knowing it's a good deal, and attacking it right away, you'll never get the best pennies on the dollar deals off an MLS. So my whole homework is doing all of this analysis at the grassroots level. So when I see a property and it pops up in my inbox and I'm like, oh, 80K, well, that's worth 250. I already know. Why? Because I've been pulling comps and doing all this homework.
You know your market.
I'm not even thinking anymore. No. I'm just, I explained it to a kind of day as like, this is part of like the Animal Planet. Like you have to become the lion in this real estate game, or you could be a hyena or another level of scavenger. The lions are going to come in. They're doing what I'm doing, analyzing the market, and we're just killing. We're taking down buffaloes all day. And eventually we eat and then we're full and we'll go sit on the market. Maybe we locked up 5 deals and we're like, I'm not looking for any more for a couple months. Then the slower people can come in and get a couple of deals who don't really have their numbers together or their analysis together. You just want to get up to that apex level where you can go out and take down the best deals. And for the average person, 5-10 deals a year, it is going to get them out of the 9 to 5 in a year or two, realistically.
I think that's the most wise advice if you're listening to this. And look, you can't do this everywhere. So I think I've seen investors fall in trap. I'm going to look at 30 markets and underwrite 30 markets. You've got to start with 2 zip codes. Start with a zip code and understand, this is the type. There's typically 3 ones that are bungalows and they're 1,300 square feet. And you start to understand the floor plans of them. And then once you start to get in there, you can know, hey, I've renovated this type of house. This is the type of value. And the real magic comes, you bought 2 or 3 deals and you've got 2 appraisals, and you can look on the appraisers. What do they use as comps? And so you can start to work backwards from, I know that the appraisal is going to lead here. And there's no better feeling seeing that property come on the market, because you're totally right. It's gone within 24 to 48 hours.
It's gone.
Because people like you are looking out there. They know the market. And so I think that's probably the best advice for a first-time investor is pick a market, and for 3 months, look at what comes on the market, see what it sells at. Comes on the market, see what it sells at, and you can start to get a feel for the rhythm of it.
Yeah, but you have to do that work. It's just like sports. It's like if you just take jump shots, you could be at the playground. But if you go to an NBA court, the rim's still 10 feet off the ground, 15 feet from the foul line. So those same mechanics you put in your backyard, you can take all over the world, the same mechanics you put in. And that's the philosophy. But some people think they're going to get into the game. When that property hits the market, that's the game. This is not practice anymore. So if you didn't practice your mechanics, the competition's already on now. So you're playing against people who we're not thinking anymore. This is just pure reaction. Like, I see the property, I know it's worth 250. I know it's worth 250. Just like I know if I wake up in the morning and I reach my feet out of the bed, the floor is going to be on the ground. I don't need to look to examine to see if the floor is there. It's there. I know it's there.
Let me tell you, I'm glad I'm not competing with you in a market.
Yeah, no joke.
So maybe you have to send me offline what markets you're in, so I'll make sure to stay out of those, because that's what it takes to win. And look, there's plenty of zip codes and plenty of markets, and you can do this in a ton of different pockets, but that's kind of the mentality. And also see the competitive athletic side coming out, where I see you getting fired up talking about this. It's like game time over here.
Yeah, you can't get me talking about real estate. I'm always fired up. That's why people like my little rants I go on, because I'm always just way too fired up about real estate.
I love it. And you wouldn't start mentoring people if you weren't fired up. So tell us a little about kind of the work you do there.
Yeah, so I have 2 good mentorship programs. One is definitely for people who come to me and they're just like, I think the only thing that's missing is the knowledge. Can you give me the knowledge? And I have a mentorship program, the 100 Keys Masterclass, where I work with my people one-on-one. I train them on how to do these things, how to build value, learn how to become a GC and manage tenants and evict tenants and screen tenants, and how to find value and break themselves out of the 9 to 5. So that's good. I also have a program called my Boots on the Ground program. And this was like a challenge from one of my mentees. He said, Brian, I get the knowledge piece, but I'm busy. I'm making good money. And how do I just become you? How do I just snap my fingers and become you? So I stepped back and said, one, what does that mean? I went in my back cave. I came out, thought about it, and I created this program where I find the deals. So I take my deal analysts and my people in-house. We find the deals for you in one of my hot markets like Philly. We help you to get the deal under contract. We tap you in with 100% lenders that give you 100% of the money to acquire and renovate the properties. We build them for you in-house with our 18 construction teams, guys I've done hundreds of deals with. We then will help you to put in tenant placement, property management in place for the long term. And we have people tapped in from Hawaii, California, Texas, Nashville, Canada, New York, all over the country are tapped in to this program, and outside of the country, of course, that are, we're building houses for actively. And whether that's like a bird deal, whether that's a cosmetic renovation to a rental, whether that's a flip deal. So we're doing deals for people from all across the country, definitely the people in priced out markets. And it takes the risk. One, it takes the risk out of it, because you're getting it built by a team that's done hundreds of deals, and getting burned by contractors is like the easiest way to get wiped out of the market.
Yep.
Two, it gives you leverage. Leverage is so important in real estate, because a lot of us out there, we do want to invest in real estate, but we have 3 kids, we're married, your wife's already yelling at you, you work too much, you're on thin ice there. And you want to do this where you're thinking can I really do it? And with my program, sometimes people ask me, they're like, but Brian, what do I do? And I'm like, look, you just sit back, you watch your house being built. We're sending you 2 inspection videos a day, every day of your property. That's more than you would see it if it was in your backyard with how busy you are. And, you know, I've done this hundreds of times, so I'm building it for you. You just sit back, relax, drink a cup of Joe, watch your house be built, and go through the course content. We'll tap in, keep you plugged in, and go find more deals. You know, stay tapped into this thing. So both of those programs have been pretty successful, but the Boots on the Ground program is for like that busy entrepreneur, which I wasn't even thinking about that person necessarily when I built the mentorship program, but those people have been popping up more and more and having a lot of success through the Boots on the Ground as well.
What kind of qualifications does somebody need if they want to get into that program specifically?
I say one, we're tapping in with 100% lenders. I would say you definitely need a decent credit score, right? Because you want to be able to qualify for these lenders. So you want to have at least like a 680. And that's kind of standard in terms of credit. I say you want to have more capital to play with. Like if you have like $50K to play with or more, because we're taking on 100% lender, that's a good cushion where you can be comfortable doing like a gut renovation on a multifamily property with 100% leverage in place, and you can get in and out of a deal. If you have more, you know, sometimes people are coming in and like I have one guy, he's doing 6 deals at once right now. So some people take it and they want to scale up, and I allow an opportunity for that. But I say like you want to have, if you're doing a small cosmetic deal, 30K and some credit cards, you can get a deal done with 100% lender. If you're trying to take on a bigger type of a deal, you want to have at least 50K, but also some credit cards. Call all your credit card carriers and apply for limit increases just so you have more liquidity. You should all do that anyway because it's going to improve your credit score. Because
so then is that they're financing? Is that 100% takeout financing basically, or you're helping acquire the building or the house, and then you've got to fund that rehab? And are you getting? Is there a rehab loan involved in that 100%?
Yeah, the construction. So the 100%
after the first draw and things like that.
Yeah, the loans will work like, let's say we had let's throw out numbers. Let's say we had a property we could buy for 100K, put 100K into it, and then it would be worth 350. So we know we can get 200,000 at like 65% of the ARV of that 350. They'll fund 100% of that. They'll give you 100K to buy it, and then they'll hold 100K in escrow. You'll go out, do 25K worth of work, get an invoice, and then bill the hard money company. They'll come out, inspect the work, reimburse you. And it'll kind of work in that phase. When you're done, you either flip it or you tenant it and then take it to the credit union, do a refinance, cash out the hard money lender or the construction lender, and then recycle your capital. This is how I pretty much took $100,000 and flipped it into a 300 property portfolio.
And so you're not cashing out too much when you do those refinances, right? You're just doing rate and term and keeping the debt.
Nowadays, yes. Like, look, in 2018, when rates were 3%, I mean, I was getting paid to build, man. I was getting paid 40, 50 grand a deal to build, which is why, you know, you're in that situation where you're like, I ain't waiting on Section 8. I'm gonna keep building. Section 8 is going to cost me $250,000. But I think as rates go back down, which they're projected to do as we get into 2024, 2025, there will be more and more cash out opportunities. If it was me and my advice, I would say get a 5-1 arm and wait for rates to go back down and save that cash out for later when you can lock it in third, better note. So yeah.
Plus it's just easier to do a rate and term refinance. I mean, it's easy to get. That's what we did in Chicago. Was we were doing. You couldn't even get a purchase contract. You couldn't get a cash out. You couldn't buy a home, but you could do a refinance. So we had a hard money lender come in and they'd refinance, and people could own, 5-10 homes pretty quickly with $100,000 in the bank. And it was pretty amazing.
It's an amazing opportunity. And because I do some of the analysis on the rent projections, like if you just increase your rent 2% a year and it goes out, when you see like that 15-year mark, I mean, a property is cash flowing $400 a year a month right now. That thing goes up to like $900, $950. These assets, if you just hold them, my goodness, with regular inflation, this is really going to set you up for life.
So if you can get, I see a lot of investors in this world where if you can get past that 5-year mark of doing even a couple of homes a year or a couple of deals a year, and you then get to that 10 to 12 properties, you have a lot of offset risk on vacancies, and you have just an amazing amount of cash flow, and you end up quickly owning many of those homes or those buildings without any kind of debt. Or you can own them free and clear if you want, but there's leverage is not a bad thing necessarily. So I totally, this is amazing that you're doing this stuff. This is great.
Yeah, you guys are spot on with that. Definitely.
Love it, Brian. Well, super enjoyed this. If people do want to talk more about this, get connected to your mentor programs, how can they best do that?
I'm pretty easy to find. You can Google, Brian Grimes Explains. It'll take you to a lot of my videos on YouTube. My YouTube channel, Brian Loves Cash Flow. That's easy to remember because I love cash flow. So Brian Loves Cash Flow. YouTube, Instagram, Brian Grimes _247 CFU for the 24/7 Cash Flow University. So you can find me there. I'm on TikTok at Grimes Estate on TikTok. And that all back links to a free training I'll put together for you guys on www.workwithgrimes.com/cashflow, workwithgrimes.com/cashflow. It's a free training that'll show you how to acquire properties for pennies on the dollar all across the country. You don't want to miss out on that free offer. So definitely tap in.
Have you given that speech before? I feel like you got that down.
I got it down, man. It's somewhere in there. It's from the YouTube, so it definitely, you got to have your
good. I love it, man. All right, well, we'll drop all that in the show notes. Brian, thanks for your time, man. We appreciate it. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah.